So think about this for a second. What if the huge problems we face, ecological collapse, all the economic instability, and constant warfare, weren't actually three separate crises? What if they were all just symptoms of a single fundamental flaw in our global system? Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful idea that fixing our relationship with nature might just be the key to fixing our economies and maybe even ourselves.
To really get our heads around this, let's start by looking at these massive, and what seem to be totally disconnected, crises that we're always trying to solve.
Okay, first up, there is the obvious one, ecological collapse. We're seeing our planet's life support system under just an unprecedented amount of strain. Habitats are disappearing, and so many species are being pushed right to the very brink. At the exact same time, our economic systems, well, they often feel like they're built on really shaky ground, right? They create so much instability and insecurity instead of real, shared prosperity. And then there's this. Despite all of our incredible advancements, social conflict and even war are still this constant, tragic part of the human story. It just feels relentless sometimes. But here is the big question, the one that ecologist Peter Smith wants us to ask. What if we're looking at all of this completely wrong? What if these are just different branches growing from the exact same poison tree, all coming from one single root? Smith says this root is a hidden defect in how we've designed our economy. It's an idea that's central to a school of thought called Georgist economics, and it's all about the private capture of what's known as economic rent, basically the unearned value that comes from just owning land and natural resources. This setup creates this powerful incentive to exploit. Smith calls it the tragedy of the privates, and it pretty much rewards taking the most you can from our shared natural commons. So how does this hidden defect actually work in the real world? Let's take a look at how it creates a system that literally pays for its own destruction. All right, here's a huge piece of the puzzle. The price of land today has become completely detached from what it can actually produce. It's treated more like a stock, a speculative asset. And that makes buying up huge areas for rewilding, well, astronomically expensive. Conservation just can't compete in a speculative market. You know, our attempts to fix this often just make it worse. Agricultural subsidies, which are supposed to support farming, actually end up inflating those speculative land prices even more. They encourage really intensive farming on marginal land, the very uplands and wetlands that should be wild. We're effectively using public money to destroy nature. It's just like Peter Smith says, the system is wired with perverse incentives. It actively rewards the destruction of the natural world, and that makes conservation a constant, uphill economic battle. Okay, so if the economic system itself is the problem, is there a way to, rewire it? The proposal is actually surprisingly simple, but it is revolutionary. The solution that's on the table is something called a land value tax, or LVT. The idea is brilliant in its simplicity. You shift taxes off of productive things like your labor or the buildings you create, and you put them onto the unimproved value of the land itself. That's the value that no single person created, but that comes from nature and the community around it. So here's how it works as a tool for nature. By taxing land value, you make it totally unprofitable to just sit on unproductive land, hoarding it for speculation. The economic pressure to farm every last acre just disappears, especially on that marginal land. The whole incentive flips, and owners would find it makes more sense to just let it be. And here's the most amazing part. Nature would do all the work for free. This passive rewilding would happen at absolutely no cost to the taxpayer, but it would deliver these incredible benefits. You'd have restored wetlands soaking up floodwaters, healing peatlands, and forests sequestering massive amounts of carbon. The system would finally align profit with a healthy planet. And this brings us to the final and, maybe the most profound piece of this entire puzzle, the connection between this huge economic shift and the potential for real, lasting peace. The argument goes like this. The same hidden defect that drives us to exploit the planet also drives us to exploit each other. When unearned wealth can be captured just by controlling land and resources, it creates what Smith calls a predator culture. This fierce competition over territory and its value becomes the foundation for social conflict, and ultimately, for war. So we're left with a truly provocative thought. By correcting this one economic flaw, by realigning our system to reward regeneration instead of extraction, could we be doing so much more than just saving habitats?
Could a simple shift in how we tax things, the very key to a wilder, more biodiverse, and economically vibrant world, also be the exact same path to a more just and peaceful one?